Today on Deb's Place.
1 in 100 girls is anorexic, 1 in 4 are bulimic, 1 in 4 12-year-old girls wants to have cosmetic surgery.
What are we doing to our children? And do these images concern you? Welcome to Deb's Place. I'm Debbie Gould. Today is all about our children and the effects of carrying unresolved issues from childhood into adulthood. Abuse can take many forms and the impact can be disastrous. 57% of women surveyed by the Australian Institute of Family Studies have experienced at least one form of abuse in their lifetime. More than 300,000 reports suspecting child abuse are recorded every year in Australia. Less than half are investigated, and of those, 1/3 are found to be true. More than 55,000 Australian children fall victim to emotional, physical and sexual abuse every year. Any expert will tell you that all forms of abuse leave a scarring impact on victims and that it's a burden they can carry forever. It breaks a girl's self-esteem, sense of trust and self-worth when she is turned into an object. It seems that our children are getting older, younger. Australian children watch an average of 2.5 hours of television per day. That equates to about 30 commercials per hour, 525 commercials per week and 23,000 commercials per year, many promoting unhealthy foods, violent toys and images that encourage girls to focus on their appearance, and that is just on television.
Hi Deb, it is so great being with you.
Becky, what is evangelism?
It is sharing the good news of Jesus Christ, who he is, why he came, what he did, how we can know God through him.
So why don't people evangelize?
I think there's several reasons for that. One is they've seen it done poorly, or they misunderstand what evangelism is. They think it's a technique that you've got to do on a poor victim where you're being aggressive and buttonholing people. That isn't what evangelism is at all.
So is there a DNA of evangelism?
I think there are two things about the DNA of witnessing. The first thing is recognizing we got to lean on God's resources. We need to learn how to display Christ's love, to declare God's truth, to depend upon God's power. The second thing is there's a process involved in evangelism. The first thing is that we need to arouse curiosity. The Lord said to Paul, first thing I want you to do is open the eyes of the Gentiles. He did not say, Paul, the first thing I want you to do is exegete Ezekiel. We tend to jump in way too quick, and we haven't aroused the curiosity of the seeker. And thirdly, we need to know if our friends say, I want to meet Jesus, we've got to know how to introduce our friends to Christ.
Robin Moulds runs the Salvation Army's street-level mission in Sydney. She and her husband Paul care for thousands of people on Sydney streets every year, showing Christ's unconditional love. But Robin is no stranger to tough times. She now uses her life experience in ministry, making good from bad, showing love, understanding and compassion to prostitutes, the homeless, the mentally ill and others who society would rather forget. Robin is a leader in her field and a great example of using life's tough experiences for good. Robin, welcome. What are some of the hardships that you have experienced through life?
For the first 11 years of my life, I grew up in a violent alcoholic family, and so had to suffer those first 11 years in a quite horrendous, difficult way through going through things with my family.
What did that do to your self-esteem?
I think for anyone who has to endure abuse in their life, it does impact on the way you feel about yourself, the way you look at yourself, or even interpret life situations.
Visit debsplace.tv for more on money and faith and how the two can go together. Also, does God see us differently because of what we do or don't have? Or does God care about our attitude and approach with the little that we do have? DebsPlace.tv.
Denise is Communications Officer for Crown Financial Ministries. Denise, welcome.
Thank you.
Many of us don't have lots of money. In fact, lots of people are on a very, very tight budget. Tell me some of the people who would come to you. What types of problems would they come to you for?
Well, they can be both ways. They can either have too much and they're not sure what to do with it and spending it unwisely, or they can have not enough and they're encumbered with debt and laid down with debt. But I would say that most people that come to the ministry are financially encumbered, so they've got too much debt and they find that that's putting a strain on the marriage. So the type of people that come to us are people who have a heart to actually serve God. But what happens over time is they take on the world's view and not the God's view of actually handing money and resources.
So what would be some of the solutions that you would suggest that we could put in place?
Well, just some practical, if we look at some practical solutions here, is don't recreational shop. Now, I'll give you a great example of this, is this jacket here, which was on the shelf for $149, and I went to the checkout and it was marked down to $55. And then they said there's another 50% off. I got it for $29. Now, the thing is that when I found out about that, I was so tempted to go back in and spend the remainder. I thought, I've got it for $29, surely I can make up the difference. But what we can do then is God has blessed us, so then we can actually use that money to actually bless others.
What are some of the things people might say to you that they would say, I wish I had known that when I was younger?
I would say one of the biggest things is, I don't call it a budget because it has negative connotations, but a spending plan. A spending plan is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went.
Putting your faith out in public can be a difficult thing to do. We're not all called to be celebrities or superstars, but as Christians, we are called to be ambassadors for God. When the people around us know we have a faith but don't understand what it's all about, it can expose us to a world of unrealistic expectations. It's then up to us to show that our faith doesn't mean we are perfect, but rather we are strong because we recognise our imperfections. Christians are expected to number over 3 billion people around the world in the next 15 years. Most of this growth will take place where Christianity is now not allowed to be shared in public. In many of these countries, Christianity is currently a hidden faith. Christians simply cannot share what they believe without the fear of persecution. Where the Christian faith is allowed, it's a different story. Some of us choose to share our faith with family and friends. Some of us choose to share in public using billboards, signs, television commercials, radio stations and print. When and how you share your faith contributes to the public perception of what Christianity is all about.
You're listening to 89.9 Line FM. It is 5...
Over any 12-month period, 74% of Christians choose to show their beliefs through their lifestyles, believing that sharing their faith in public is itself an act of evangelism. Welcome to Deb's Place. I'm Debbie Gould, and today is all about sharing our faith.
Hi Deb, it is so great being with you.
What is the sexualisation of children? How did God tell you to sell up everything and go to Uganda? What was that process? What goes on in your mind when you're sitting in a dam and watching your house burning down?
Lift up your eyes to the skies.
What things did you feel were triggers to tell you something was going wrong?
Every time I was in a public place, I felt terrified.
After the September 11 terrorist attacks in New York, church attendance is said to have risen by 25% in the following 2 months.
We're making a documentary about what's the one thing people can't live without. What's the one thing you can't live without? I'm ready to Okay, sure. What about materialism? Greed. Is greed a problem?
It built up from 50 children under a tree to now 10,000 children in 5 different schools.
The statement is, there's nothing wrong with putting a woman in her place.
We're always reflecting God in what we do. You've just got to live and breathe what you believe.
Is God to blame when things don't go your way? Let us know what you think at DebsPlace.tv.